Hello and welcome to the solution video to my 2025 AQA Practice Paper 3F. You can download a copy of this paper at my website firstclassmaths.com, and there's also a link in this video's description. I would like to thank Casio Education for sponsoring these video solutions. For this first question, you're actually going to want to make use of your calculator. We'll need to work out the value of 22 squared. You can type this straight into your calculator and you'll get the answer 484. We can also use it for the second part, the square root of 1225. Your calculator will tell you this is 35. In the second question, we have some numbers and we need to write down the mode. The mode is the number that's most frequent. We can see the number 9 here appears twice, which is more than any other number, so the mode must be 9. In the second part of the question, we need to write down the median. The median is the middle number when the numbers are in order. These numbers are already in order, so the middle one, 7, is the median. So the answer is 7. In this question, we need to shade 50% of the grid. 50% is the same as 1/2, so we just need to shade in half of the grid. Half of the grid would be 8 squares. You can shade in any 8 squares you like, but I've gone for these 8 here. In the second part of this question, we need to shade 1/3 of the grid. Since there are 30 squares here, 1/3 of 30 is 10. So we need to shade in 10 squares. Once again, it doesn't matter which 10 you shade in, but I'm going to shade in these 10 here. In this question, we have a number line and we need to work out what number is at x. For this one, I would write on all of the values. So from 2, we go 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and so on. It's now clear to see that x is at 2.7. In the second part of this question, we need to find the number that's at y. Between 1000 and 2000, there's a difference of 1000. But on the number line, this has been split into 4 equal size sections. So if we divide 1000 by 4, we find each one of these is 250. So y is 250 further on from the 1000, so if we add 250 to the 1000, we get 1250. In the final part of this question, we need to find the number that's at z. Z is halfway in between 0 and -9. This means we can find it by doing half of -9. You can use your calculator for this if you want. -9 divided by 2 is -4.5. So the answer is -4.5. For this question, we need to draw on all of the lines of symmetry onto the equilateral triangle. Most people will spot this line of symmetry, but some people will miss out the other two. There's also one that goes from this corner to the middle of the other side, and this corner to the middle of the other side as well. You might find this easier if you turn your page around and imagine that those points were at the top of the triangle. In this question, we need to write down the order of rotational symmetry. This is how many times the shape would fit onto itself if we spun it through one whole turn. I would recommend doing this one with tracing paper. In your exam, put your hand up and ask for a piece of tracing paper. Trace the shape, and then I like to draw on a letter T so I can remember where the top was. This will tell me when I've done one full turn. We then turn the shape and count how many times it fits onto itself. So if we begin turning, it fits once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and by the time we get back to the start, 5 times. So the answer is 5. In this question, we need to put the numbers in order, starting with the smallest. To do this, I'll use my calculator to convert them all into decimals. If you type 1/3 into your calculator, then turn it to a decimal, it will be 0.33333 recurring. 0.18 is already a decimal, 1/5 is 0.2, and 0.3 is already a decimal. If we now write the numbers vertically like this, and fill in gaps with zeros, it becomes easier to see which one's the smallest. The smallest one is 0.18, so we'll cross that off. Then it's 0.2, which in our question was actually 1/5. So we'll cross off 0.2 but write 1/5 on the answer line. Then it's 0.3, and finally 1/3, which was 0.333 recurring. In this question, we need to simplify. We'll do this by collecting like terms. For the numbers, we have 9 subtract 2. 9 subtract 2 is 7. Then we have 10m subtract 1m, which would be 9m. So it's 7 plus 9m. In this question, we need to factorize, which means we need to put it back into brackets. Looking at 4a and 14, the highest common factor of these is 2, so we can factorize out a 2. Then we need to think what we would multiply 2 by to get to 4a. Well, that would be 2a. and then what would we multiply 2 by to get to 14? That's 7. So it's 2 brackets 2a plus 7. In this question we have a Akib who's buying an ice cream. He must choose 2 different flavours, and we need to list all of the possible flavours that he could choose. So they've already done one for us, vanilla chocolate, so it makes sense to carry on from vanilla. So we have vanilla chocolate already, we'll then do vanilla strawberry, vanilla mint, and vanilla pistachio, so that's all of the ones that involve vanilla. So we'll move along to chocolate. But we don't need to do chocolate and vanilla, because we already have vanilla chocolate, which is the same combination. So we'll do chocolate with all of the flavours that aren't vanilla. So chocolate strawberry, chocolate mint, and chocolate pistachio. Then we move on to strawberry, and we don't need to do this with vanilla or chocolate, because we've already done those. So it's strawberry mint and strawberry pistachio. And finally we go on to mint, and we've done mint with all of the flavours apart from pistachio, so we need mint pistachio, and that's all of your combinations. In this question we need to solve an inequality. We'll start by adding 5 to both sides. On the left hand side this will cancel the 5, so we have 3x, and on the right hand side 46 plus 5 is 51. We can then divide both sides by 3. 3x divided by 3 is 1x, and 51 divided by 3 is 17. So we get the solution x is less than 17. If you end up with an inequality like this, a really common mistake is people write an equal sign. Make sure you stick with the inequality sign given in the question. In this question, we've got 2 spinners that are used in a game. Players are going to spin both spinners to work out their score, which we get by multiplying both numbers on the spinners. We're told that Layla's score is an odd number and we need to work it out. Well, if we're going to multiply a number from spinner A and a number from spinner B and end up with an odd number, there's only actually one way to do it. If you get a 3 on the first one and a 7 on the second one, and you do 3 times 7, you get 21. That's the only possible odd number. We're then told that Olivia's score is a square number. A square number is when you multiply a number by itself. This means that Olivia's number for spinner A must be the same as on spinner B, and there's only one number on both of the spinners. That's the number 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. Alfie's score is between 40 and 50, so we need to find a number on spinner A and spinner B, which when you multiply is between 40 and 50. There's only one possibility here, it must be 6 and 7, since 6 times 7 is 42. In this question, we need to write down the coordinates of point A. We'll start with the x-coordinate by going down to the x-axis, and you can see that's -1. For the y-coordinate, we'll go across to the y-axis, which is 8. So it's -1, 8. For the second part of this question, we need to plot point C on the grid, and we're told that ABC is an isosceles triangle, and that the x-coordinate of C is the same as the y-coordinate of C. If the x and y coordinates are the same, then the point must look something like this: 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on. All of these points have the same x-coordinate as they do the y-coordinate. So we need to pick one of these and hope that it forms an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle is one where 2 of the sides are the same length. Let's try 1, 1. If we connect together A to B, and then down to this point 1, 1, it doesn't form an isosceles triangle. So we'll try 2, 2. This point here, if we connect these up, it does form an isosceles triangle. You can see that these 2 sides here are the same length. So this must be where point C is, at 2, 2. You don't need to draw the triangle here, you just need to mark on point C at 2, 2. In this question we have 2 number machines and we're told the output is the same for both of them. Let's work out the output of the first number machine. The input is 8, and then we multiply it by 2.1, so we do 8 multiplied by 2.1, which is 16.8. Then we take this number and add to it 18.2. And if you add 16.8 and 18.2, you get 35. So this is the output of the first number machine, but the question said the output for both number machines is the same, so the output of the second one is also 35. We're going to work backwards in this number machine. If we start at 35 and go backwards, rather than subtracting 15, we need to add 15. And then rather than dividing n, we need to multiply n. And then we'll end up at 80. So 35 plus 15 is 50, and then we take this 50 and multiply it by n, and we need to end up at 80. 50 multiplied by n is just the same as 50n, so 50n equals 80. This is an equation we can solve by dividing both sides by 50. 50n divided by 50 is 1n, and 80 divided by 50, if you use your calculator, is 1.6. So you'll find that n is 1.6. In this question, we need to describe a single transformation that maps shape A onto shape B. You should be able to spot that shape A has been reflected onto shape B. It's been reflected in this line here. So we'd write down reflection, since that's how it's been transformed, but we need to describe this line. This line crosses the x-axis at -3, so its equation is x is equal to -3. In the second part of the question, we need to describe the transformation that maps shape A onto shape C this time. This one is a rotation. It's easiest to tell using tracing paper. If you take some tracing paper and trace the shape A, you want to place your pen onto the tracing paper and try and turn it so it fits onto shape C. It might take you a few goes to find the point, but the point is here at 1, 3. If you turn it, you'll see that you need to turn it around half a turn, and it will land onto shape C. So we'd say it's a rotation, 180 degrees since that's half a turn, and the point is around 1, 3. You don't need to mention clockwise or anti-clockwise if you're going 180 degrees, since it's the same for both. But if it was, for example, 90 degrees, you would need to say the direction. In this question, we have a kite, and we're told that 3 identical copies of the kite are used to form an equilateral triangle. The first thing we need to do is find the size of the angle marked x. That's this angle here. Since this triangle is equilateral, this is also x, and this is also x. The angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So we can find x by dividing 180 by 3, which will give you 60. So the answer to x is 60 degrees. In the second part, we need to find the size of the angle marked y. That's this angle here. Since the kites are identical, these two angles are also y. Those 3 angles go together to make angles around a point, which add up to 360. So we can find the value of y by dividing 360 by 3, which is 120. So the answer is 120. In the final part of this question, we need to work out the perimeter of the triangle. If you look over at the kite, we were given its length here at 8 centimeters. That means all of these lengths here are 8 centimeters. There are 6 of them, so if we just add up all 6 of these 8s, we get a total of 48, which is the answer to that question. For this question, we need to draw the graph of y equals 3x minus 1 for x values between -3 and 2. To do this, we draw out a table of x and y values, and we fill in the x values from -3 to 2 like it said in the question. We then need to work out the y values using this formula here. So it's y equals 3 lots of x subtract 1. I'm going to write that as y equals 3 lots of bracket subtract 1, replacing the x for a bracket. We're then going to substitute our x values into this bracket. We'll start with 0. So if we put 0 in this bracket and then type 3 bracket 0 minus 1 into the calculator, we'll end up with the correct y value, which is -1. If you then change the number in this bracket for 1, then you'll end up with the correct y value for this one, which is 2. We then change it for 2, and that will give us the answer 5. And then I'll go back and do the negative value, so -1, and that gives us -4, -2 will give us -7, and -3 will give us -10. It doesn't matter the order in which you do these, I just like to go for 0 and the positive numbers first. Now that you've found these points, we need to plot them as coordinates. The first one will be -3, -10, which goes here. Then -2, -7, which goes here. -4, -1 goes here. 0, -1, 1, 2, and 2, 5. These form a straight line, so we take a ruler and connect them together like this. In this question, we've been given a triangle, and we've been asked to decide if angle ABC is a right angle. If we look at angle ABC here, it sort of looks like a right angle, but as one of my students pointed out when I taught them this yesterday, it says not drawn accurately. So unless there's actually a right angle symbol there, we can't know for sure that it's a right angle. If it was a right angle triangle though, then it would obey Pythagoras' theorem. So that's what we're going to test. When you do Pythagoras, you square the 2 shorter sides and add them together, and this will equal the square of the hypotenuse, the longest side. So let's square the sides. 10.4 squared, which equals this, 15.3 squared, which equals this, and 19.5 squared, which equals this. If Pythagoras' theorem was true, then when we add up these 2 numbers here, we should get the final one. So let's add up these 2 numbers and see what happens. If you do this on your calculator, you'll get 342.25, which is not the same as 19.5 squared at 380.25. This tells you that this triangle is not a right angle triangle. In fact, if you square rooted 342.25, you would find the hypotenuse would have needed to be 18.5 rather than 19.5. So we tick the box for no. In this question, we have a linear sequence, and we're told the first term is 6 and the fifth term is 50. We need to find an expression for the nth term of the sequence. To do this, we're going to need to work out what the sequence looks like first. So we know the first term is 6. We don't know the second, third, or fourth terms, but we know the fifth term is 50. To work out these missing terms, we need to work out how we get from one term to the next term. You can see here that to get from 6 to 50, we need to do this jump 4 times. The difference between 6 and 50 is 44. So if we need to cover a difference of 44 in 4 jumps, we could do 44 divided by 4, which equals 11. This means that each of these must have been add 11. We can now fill in the numbers for the sequence. 6 add 11 is 17, 17 add 11 is 28, 28 add 11 is 39, and you can check that 39 add 11 does give you 50. So we now know what the sequence looks like. If the difference between terms is 11, then the nth term must start with 11n. We would then write the multiples of 11 above the sequence, so 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, and think about how we get from this to our sequence. To get from 11 to 6, you subtract 5, and that's the same for all of the other ones as well, so it's 11n subtract 5. In the second part of this question, we have a Fibonacci sequence. We're told the first and second terms, and we need to work out the first term that's an integer, which is a whole number. For a Fibonacci sequence, to get the next term, you add up the previous 2 terms. So since we know the first term and the second term, we can get the next one by adding these 2 together. If you add them together, you get 5.8. Then we carry on to get the next term, we add up the last 2. So if we add up these 2, we end up with 9.1. And then we just keep going until we find an integer. So if we add up these 2 here, we get 14.9, and if we add up these 2 here, we get 24, which is an integer, so that's the answer to the question. In this question, we need to work out the volume of a prism. This is actually one of the formulas on your exam aid. It says the volume of a prism is the area of the cross-section multiplied by the length. We can see the length of this prism here is 8, so we just need to work out the area of the cross-section, which is this compound area here. I'll work out this area by splitting it into 2 rectangles. If we look at the rectangle on the left-hand side, we can see that it's 9 by 10. So its area will just be 9 multiplied by 10, which is 90. The other rectangle's a little bit harder though. We can see its height is 4, but we don't know how wide it is, so we're going to need to work this out. We can do this by looking at this 9 centimeters here, and this 14 centimeters here. Our length must be the difference between these two. So 14 subtract 9, which is 5. So this smaller rectangle is 5 by 4, so its area will be 5 multiplied by 4, which is 20. If we then add these 2 together, we get the total area, which is 110. So the cross-sectional area was 110. We can now return to the formula and multiply the area of the cross-section by the length. The area is 110 and the length is 8, and if you multiply these you get 880, which is the volume of this prism. In this question, we need to work out an estimate for the mean screen time of the 50 teenagers. This data is in groups, which means we need to find their midpoints. The first group goes from 200 to 300, with a midpoint of 250. The next one is from 300 to 400, which has a midpoint of 350. Then we have 450 and 550. We then multiply the frequencies by these midpoints. So 6 times 250, that's 1,500. 17 times 350 is 5,950, and then we carry on with 6,300 and 7,150. If you then add up this final column here, you'll get 20,900. This is the total amount of screen time for all of the teenagers. We then need to divide this by how many teenagers there were, which we could get by adding up the frequency column here of 50, and it's also given to you at the start of the question. So we do 20,900 divided by 50, which gives you 418. So the answer is 418. For the second part of the question, we need to find the interval that contains the median. To do this, we take the total frequency, which was 50, and add 1, which gives you 51. We divide this by 2 to get 25.5. This tells us the median is located at the 25.5th value. We then go down this frequency column and keep adding on frequencies until we get to 25.5. So if we include the first group, we've got 6. If we add on the next group, there's another 17, so 6 add 17 is 23. So we're close to 25.5, but not there yet. If we add in the next group, there's 14 more, which will take us to 37. So we've definitely gone past the 25.5 value, so it must be in this group, which is from 400 to 500. So the interval containing the median is 400 to 500. In this question, we're told the area of the triangle is 24% more than the area of the trapezium. We need to work out h, the height of the triangle. We'll start by working out the area of the trapezium, and our exam aid comes in handy once again. The area of the trapezium is 1/2 a plus bh, where a and b are the parallel sides, so the 12.5 and the 7.5, and h is the height, which is 5. So let's write out this formula and substitute in those values. So it's 1/2 a plus b, which is our 12.5 add 7.5, multiplied by the height, which is 5. You can type that into the calculator and it will give you the answer 50. So the area of the trapezium is 50. But the area of the triangle is 24% more than this. So let's find 24% of 50 and add it on. To find 24% of 50, we can do 24, divide by 100, multiplied by 50. And this will give you the answer 12. So 24% of 50 is 12. We need to add this 24% on, so we do 50 plus 12, which is 62. This tells us the area of the triangle needs to be 62. So we just need to work out the height that makes this work. If we were to do the area of the triangle, we would do 1/2 multiplied by the base, which is 8, multiplied by the perpendicular height, which we don't know, that's h. But we do know that this needs to equal 62. So we just have this equation to solve. If you do 1/2 multiplied by 8, you get 4. And if you multiply this 4 by h, you get 4h. So it's 4h equals 62. You can solve this equation by dividing both sides by 4. If you do 62 divided by 4 on your calculator, you find that h is equal to 15.5, which is the answer to the question. In this question, we need to complete a Venn diagram. We've been told there are 72 counters in a box, and they are either red or green, and they're either large or small. We're told about a ratio of the red to green counters, which is 3 to 5, so let's work with this first. The ratio of red to green counters is 3 to 5. Since we know the total number of counters in the box, we can add up and get the total number of parts of this ratio. 3 add 5 is 8. So if we write the total number of counters, 72, underneath this, we need to work out how to get from 8 to 72, which is multiplied by 9. This means we can multiply the other parts of the ratio by 9 as well. 3 multiplied by 9 is 27, and 5 multiplied by 9 is 45. This tells us there are 27 red counters and 45 green counters. If we look at the Venn diagram, we're told that the circle for R is red counters, so we know that there must be a total of 27 inside this circle. We're told in the question that 11 of the red counters are small. This overlapping section here in the middle is red counters, but they're large, since it overlaps with the large circle. That means this section here are red counters that are not large, which means they're small in this question. So the number 11 goes here. Since the whole circle needs to make 27 and we've already put 11 in, we can find out the amount that goes in the middle section by doing 27 subtract 11, which is 16. So 16 needs to go here. We're also told in the question that 8 of the green counters are large. This circle here is for large counters. The ones in the middle were large red counters, so the ones on the right here must be large not red counters, which means they're green counters. So the number 8 just goes here. We need to work out one more number, which is the one in the bottom right. Since we know all of the other numbers here, we can just add these together, which gives you 35. That means we've already put in 35 counters. So we just need to see how many there are left from the 72. So 72 subtract 35 is 37. So the number in the bottom right here would be 37. In the second part of the question, it says one of the counters is chosen at random, and we need to work out the probability that this counter is a large green counter. Looking at the Venn diagram, there were 8 large green counters, so the probability will be 8 out of the total number of counters, which was 72. In this question, we have some statements and we need to tick the correct box. The first statement says the gradient of L1 is positive. When we go from left to right, the line L1 slopes downwards. This means its gradient must be negative. So the statement that says the gradient of L1 is positive just cannot be true. It has to be negative. The second statement says the coordinates of the y-intercept of L1 are 0, 2. The y-intercept is where the line L1 crosses the y-axis, so that's here. Now we don't actually have numbers on the y-axis here. It could be that it goes 1, 2, in which case this would be true. But there's nothing to say it couldn't go, say, 2, 4, in which case the y-intercept here would be 0, 4. So it certainly could be true, but it doesn't definitely have to be true, so we would tick the middle box, could be true. The final statement says L1 and L2 are parallel. You can see that both of these lines are parallel since they will never meet, and they have the same gradient. So this must be true. In the first part of this question, we need to write down the roots of this equation. The roots of this equation are where its graph crosses the x-axis, which is in two places, here and here. So we just write down these numbers, they are -4 and 2. In the second part of the question, we need to write down the coordinates of the y-intercept of the curve. Just like in the previous question, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, which is here. We can see this is at 8, so its coordinates must be 0, 8. The final part of the question wants us to write down the x-coordinate of P, which is the turning point of the curve. If we go from the turning point P down to the x-axis, this is the value we're looking for. The x-coordinate of a turning point of a quadratic graph like this one is always halfway in between the roots, so halfway in between these two. The difference between -4 and 2 is 6. So if we half this, we get 3. So to find the x-coordinate of P, we could either add on 3 to -4 or subtract 3 from +2. -4 add 3, and 2 subtract 3 both give you the answer -1. In this final question, we need to simplify 20c⁴ over 5c. This is a division, so we can start by doing 20 divided by 5, which is 4. We then need to do c⁴ divided by c. You can think of c as being c⁴. When we divide like this, we subtract the indices, so 4 subtract 1, which is 3. So it'll be 4c⁴. In the second part, we need to simplify 4n⁵, all cubed. When you cube a number, you multiply it by itself a total of 3 times. So we have 4n⁵ times 4n⁵ times 4n⁵. To do this, we can multiply all the 4s first. So 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. So the answer will have 64, and then we multiply the n⁵s, n⁵ times n⁵ times n⁵. Since we're multiplying these, we then add the indices. So 5 add 5 add 5 is 15. So n⁵. So the answer is 64n⁵. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you found it useful. It would help me out massively if you would subscribe, like, comment, or share this video.